The day after Prime Minister Mark Carney declared a rupture of the world order, U.S. President Donald Trump laid out a starkly different vision. In his speech to the World Economic Forum in Davos today, Trump said the U.S. is keeping the whole world afloat, and he repeatedly described the decay of Europe, the very continent he was speaking from.
After the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now?
But just hours after Trump repeated his need to acquire Greenland, Trump appeared to change course, posting this statement saying, "Based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and, in fact, the entire Arctic region. This solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States of America and all NATO nations." Trump added, "I will not be imposing the tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st on 8 European allies." But speaking last hour, Trump couldn't provide much detail while speaking to CNBC.
Well, we have a concept of a deal. I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
A deal of ownership, a deal...
Well, it's a little bit complex, but we'll explain it down the line.
Well, joining me now, we've got Bob Rae. He, of course, is a former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations. Bob, you got to help us make sense out of all of this as best we can, I suppose. The president's post about the Greenland, the deal, whatever this framework is, does not mention acquiring Greenland. I mean, I guess it's better than where the day started. How reassured should people be that his ambitions with Greenland seem to be resolved?
Well, David, I think this is proof of the formula that Roy Cohn talked about with a young Donald Trump, as described in the movie The Apprentice. You know, attack, attack, attack. Never apologize. Never publicly step down. And if you don't get exactly what you want, declare victory. Which I think is what the president is doing. This is part of the playbook, and his entire speech was part of the playbook. Sinister, wandering around from various personal attacks on people, attacks on whole continents, denying the role of anybody else in World War II. I mean, Donald, we were in World War II 2 years before he was. I mean, this is just the way he is. And I think for the world to see the contrast between the speech of our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and this performance, because you can only call it a performance by the President of the United States, I think is an object lesson for all of us. I mean, Mr. Carney was precise, clear, candid. He wasn't declaring the rupture. He was describing the rupture. He wasn't announcing something. He was saying, it looks to me as if this is what's happening, and how do you feel about this? And then going through and taking the world through how each one of us comes at this feeling differently and challenged by the world that we're in, and yet pointing the way to some things that we can all do. Domestically, we have to build more resilience. We have to build up our defenses. And then when it comes to building partnerships, I think Mr. Carney is stating very clearly that Canada wants to be very much in part of this building of an alliance of middle power countries that are going to be trying to do what we can to save the furniture of some of the basic principles of how we trade, how we deal with each other.
Right. I want to get into that.
Remarkable.
Yeah, I want to get more into what the Prime Minister had to say in just a little bit. But, you know, you were at the UN. I just wonder, he made this claim, the president did, that the U.S. gave Greenland back to Denmark after the Second World War and called Denmark ungrateful. There was a lot of everybody isn't grateful enough, and if it wasn't for him, they'd be speaking German, which he said in Switzerland, which I think is a majority German-speaking country anyway, just organically.
Yeah.
But
Right.
what he said about giving it back and claiming it, and if you don't give it to us, we'll remember. How careful does NATO need to be in its next steps over the next little while? Because I don't know if this is a retreat or a regrouping by the president, but it doesn't seem resolved in his mind.
Well, I don't think it's resolved yet. I think the thing anybody learns from dealing with Donald Trump is that it's not resolved until you see the details. And even when you see the details, there's no way of knowing whether or not he will stick to it or keep his word or reinvent something. So when people say, oh, I've solved this problem, it's all solved, it's done, you sort of say, but look at the damage you've caused. Look at the damage you've caused to your credibility of the United States. Look at the damage you've caused to the markets. Look at the damage you've caused to all the activities that have gone on. None of this was necessary. In fact, frankly, when you think of the last year, so much uncertainty, so much problems, so many people laid off, so many people facing challenges, economies going south, all of them because of one person. And that's what makes all this so difficult. And I think our prime minister was a model of restraint, never once mentioned the word Donald Trump or the name. But we have to understand that we're living in a world where we simply cannot rely on the United States for certainty, for credibility, for steadiness, and for empathy, and for understanding of what other countries are going through. And I think most of us would say that for 80 years, for the most part, not always, we had differences, we had profound problems and challenges. But for the most part, we did have a relationship where you could trust people's word and you could trust what they would say, and you would know that they were not acting out of personal pettiness or vindictiveness. And so I think most people would part company with Mr. Trump, even on his assessment of Mark Carney's speech, because I think it was a great speech. And, Mr. Trump's issued saying, look at all the things we've done for you. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but look at all the things you've done to us. When we look at all the things the United States has done with us over 80 years and even longer, we can say, yes, many achievements, many good things, Mr. Trump. But when we look at what you are doing to us now, I don't think gratitude is the first thought that comes to the minds and hearts of most Canadians, not because we're petty, but because we know that many of the troubles we've had to experience have been because of the positions and the vindictiveness of one person. And that's what we're living with.
Well, I just want to play that chunk from Trump's performance, as you call it, speech, as he would call it, where he sort of took aim at Mark Carney and took aim at Canada and talked about the lack of gratitude that he's sensing from the Prime Minister and the country as a whole. Just have a listen to this.
Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Bob Rae, I wonder about that. I mean, does this risk U.S. relations with Canada? I mean, because you never know how Donald Trump's going to react whether you say something or don't say something. But that was his response there. What is there a downside to that reaction, do you think?
I think you should play that clip alongside Marlon Brando in The Godfather. I really do. I mean, play it. Even the voice is the same. I mean, I defy you to do that. Some clever person could put that together for your next clip. Because that's what we're dealing with here. I mean, people say, well, he could be vindictive, he could be difficult if we upset him. You say, it doesn't matter what we say or do. Whatever we say or do, he's going to be vindictive, and he's going to be difficult, and he's going to be unpredictable. And that's what we're dealing with. That's what the world is dealing with. That's what Canada is dealing with. And yes, we're a trading partner. It's difficult. But, I mean, I long ago decided that there was really no point in pretending that we're dealing with a normal situation where you say, well, because you said this, I'm going to do that. And you sort of say, well, because you didn't give me the Nobel Prize, I'm going to do. I mean, the whole thing is, I think the word is nuts. And we ought to be able to just look at this thing and say, it's crazy. Mr. Carney gave a great speech. He never mentioned Mr. Trump. He never attacked the president. He never said anything negative. He just said, we have to move into a situation where there's greater predictability, and we're not going to bend the knee. We're not going to be subordinates in a situation where we need to be at the table.
Right.
And I think that's something that Canadians and indeed people around the world, I don't think we've ever seen a global reaction to a speech like this from people. I just got a text message from one of my former colleagues at the UN. I'm here in New York, by the way. If
Right.
people are wondering what is that background, it's a hotel room in New York. I'm just saying, the reaction from people. This guy's a great diplomat, and he said, "How do I become a Canadian right away?" He said, "I can't believe your prime minister was able to speak in such a way, so clearly to us, all of us, and he represented a country in Africa." So you've got to understand the message of Mr. Carney was a message of hope and of understanding and of great courage. And the message from Donald Trump is a message of pettiness, vindictiveness, and wandering all over the map as he spreads the negativity that he spreads in whatever he has to say. So I don't think any of us should hold back. I think we should just say what we think. And I think we should be ready to move. If the president wants to have a discussion about trade relationships or anything else, fine. But we've really come to the conclusion as a country that we have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to take the steps we can to advance our own interests.
So the Prime Minister's words, obviously, I think it's fair to say, broadly well received by the audience there in Europe. Though the criticism is that
more than that.
No. I'm going to go through a couple of steps here. That the Davos crowd has been criticized as sort of an elite sort of group. But you can see the resonance it had with a lot of people. It's a lot of things Mark Carney has said in the past, bundled together in a clear argument, right? That you saw there. But and the parts of it, Bob Rae, where he says the middle powers need to sort of pivot and come together and use their combined strength. That's an easy thing to get behind as a Canadian. You can, like, alliances with Sweden, and other European nations, not a problem. But this is a world of imperfect options. And the deal with China, while maybe necessary, I don't know. There's discomfort with that from the Premier of Ontario, some of the big unions and other groups involved in the auto sector. As a former Premier of Ontario, you know how important that is. This path that Canada finds itself on, how do you navigate that when the interests of federalism are going to be pitted against each other as you make difficult choices like what we're seeing with the reaction in Ontario?
Well, it's challenging, but let me talk to you about the car business, because I know something about it, having been premier and having worked with all the players in the industry, companies, as well as the trade unions and great people working in the industry right across the province and across Canada. Our challenge on the auto industry right now is not China. It's not 3% of the auto market. Our challenge right now is Donald Trump, because Donald Trump wants to get rid of the trade agreement that we've had over many, many years. He made the statement when he was walking through an auto plant in Michigan, we don't need Canada. We don't need to have any of our cars made in Canada. And that's where I think people should be focusing their attention. The China issue is not as big a deal as the people who are opposing it would like to suggest it is. Sure, people should buy cars made in Canada. The question is, are we going to be able to have those cars built in Canada if Donald Trump gets his way? Look at all the American companies that have decided to put all their new investments in the United States and not in Canada. Why have they chosen to do that? Donald Trump. Donald Trump has told them to do that. That's his message. The message from the United States to us is, you guys, give us your water, give us your resources, give us access to the whole country. In fact, we'll take you over. We'd rather just take you over. But even before that happens, you don't need manufacturing. You don't need to do that. We'll do that for you. And, you just give us the resources. We become, the hewers of wood and the drawers of water for the United States. That's what they would like us, the Trump administration would like us to be.
Yeah.
And so I think, with great respect to Premier Ford, who I think is doing everything he can to advance the interests of the Ontario economy and in the way he's speaking, but I do part company with him when he focuses all his attention on what's happening with 3%, potentially 3% of the cars sold in Ontario. We don't even know how many will sold or how it will go. We have no idea where the dealerships are going to be or how this is going to function. It's all, to be seen what will emerge. And he's getting all agitated about that and not getting agitated enough about what his former buddy Donald is doing to the industry. And that's the real problem right now that we're having.
But
the real challenge we're having is with the United States on cars. It's not with China.
No, look, I get all of that, but there is the reality that, trust me, you host a 2-hour political show every day in Canada. You're very aware of what the U.S. is doing. But look, this current administration, no country is a partner with the Donald Trump America, right? You're either a competitor, a customer, or a supplier. Partnership is not part of the way he looks at things. But China, while it may be predictable, to use the Prime Minister's words, I don't know if it's reliable. I sure don't know if it's trustworthy with what we've gone through with them as a country over the last 10 years. So you can understand the skepticism and the concern about letting the nose of the camel into the tent, is the way it was described to me, with allowing the EV to start coming back and talking about investment there. There is a risk in moving closer with that particular country as well, is there not?
I think we have a lot of means to deal with the risk. If you look at the way the Prime Minister has structured the conversation with China, and we've all had discussions about this. I mean, I'm not giving any secrets away. We've had these discussions in New York, discussions elsewhere, and every step of the way, when we're trying to see how can we improve the relationship with China, or with Saudi Arabia, or with any number of countries that have authoritarian governments, you have to be very careful and you have to be very clear. And we've been very clear that when it starts to touch the security of the country, when it starts to touch things that we have to be careful about and know about. When it comes to foreign interference, we've been very clear. Whether it's the government of India or whether it's the government of China, we're going into these discussions with our eyes wide open, which is the way it should be. But it doesn't really work to suggest that everything that's coming out of China is something to be seen with complete and total suspicion. I think we have to be careful about the sort of language we use to describe the situation. We have very sophisticated intelligence system. We have intelligence sharing with some of the most advanced economies in the world. We have very close sharing of information between us, even now with the United States and with the UK and France, others. So we need to be clear that we understand the security questions very, very well. But we also need to understand that the car industry, for example, is now a global industry. And we can't pretend that it's just a Canada-US industry. Mexico's been brought into it in a huge way. Mexico's a huge partner with us on cars. And the same is true in Europe as Europe begins to transform its industry. The automobile industry is a global industry, and China is a rising power. I actually made a trip to China 25 years ago as a private citizen. As a lawyer, was asked by a couple of clients to look and see what's going on with the auto industry in China. And I came back and said, well, right now, it's not that sophisticated and it's not that big. But based on the pattern of everything else that we've seen, China is going to be able to develop some of the most sophisticated cars in the world. They're supplying their own market, which is huge. They're supplying the Asian market, which is huge. And we've got to understand, just as we did with the Japanese many, many years ago, right, the early 1980s, this is the same phenomenon. And you don't respond to it by just putting up a wall and saying, no, you can't come. It doesn't operate that way. Because we know if we say that to them, they say, okay, you can't sell your canola. And there you go. That's the deal. This was a purely commercial deal that was based on an understanding of how this had to come out in the end. And it's not easy, and I know the auto workers are uneasy about the situation, but the reasons for the uneasiness of the auto industry in Canada is principally because of what Donald Trump is doing in the United States. We have to face up to that.
Bob Rae, I always appreciate and enjoy these chats. We've got to let you go. Thank you so much. That's Bob Rae, Canada's former ambassador to the United Nations. See you, sir.
I'm going to start calling you the Hammer now, Dave. You're putting the hammer down.
Yeah. I don't think that's what happened here. But good to talk to you. We'll chat again soon.